Hello, and welcome to this episode of In Conversation. I'm Judith Rinehart of the Rinehart Gallery here in Seattle, Washington, and I'm delighted to have two fantastic artists with us today, Melana Bontrager and Jazz Brown. Both artists live and work in the Pacific Northwest and explore line, space, and geometric abstraction in their own unique ways. Melana Bontrager's exhibition of abstracted landscapes, titled Other People's Conversations, and Jazz Brown's geometric abstractions, titled Intimacy Aware, are both on view in the gallery through September 11th, 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll let the artists introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Jazz Brown. I'm a painter and I live and work out of Seattle, Washington. My exhibition is called Intimacy Aware, and it's pretty much a love letter to love, just making sure that love recognizes, realizes what it truly is.
I'm Melana Bontrager, and I am an artist out of Everett, Washington, and I paint primarily with acrylic, using a combination of India ink or graphite line mixed with the acrylic. This show, called Other People's Conversations, came out of, during COVID, I really got into podcasts and listening to other people's conversations, and found myself engaging in a way that was very different from the relationships that I ordinarily have in times where we spend more time with each other. And so it got me thinking about how we connect with each other, how the relationships develop, and how much we listen or don't listen to each other.
I'm excited to talk about art. Simply, I love art.
I'm excited to hear more about process, because I feel like I get to see a lot of Jazz's work, but sometimes because creating art is such an individual and personal endeavor, and often we do that by ourselves, we don't often get to hear about the process and what's behind the work and the thought behind it. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about what are the highlights, what are the struggle points, what are the things behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see when we see the finished work. Hi, Jazz.
Hi, Melana. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Likewise.
And we say hi to everyone who's watching. Welcome. So what should we talk about?
I have a few questions about your art.
Okay.
And a lot of them actually came from your introduction.
Oh, good. Like on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I heard you mention photography.
Yes. Yeah.
How does photography inform the work that you do now?
That's a good question, and I have thought about that. And I started in black and white photography, and so looking at texture and looking at just the way that objects line up in a composition was important to me. I did a lot of object study when I did my undergraduate work. So that plays into what I do now in painting. A composition has to work for me. The textures have to work well, and I think that working comes from my start in photography.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look at them and, I see, just little, landscapes.
Yeah.
So it feels very, photogenic.
Very cool. Oh, it's an interesting connection then.
Yeah.
How does composition, because I feel like your compositions are really strong. What part does that play in yours?
Ultimately, with the paintings, I try to represent, what we call existence, essentially, form,
Okay.
Vibration. So everything that you see, on the surface of each painting is simply an expression of vibration. It's how I feel vibration looks, from a smaller scale or even a larger scale, something like a supernova, or as tiny as just, an atom, bigger, it's pretty, it's not pretty much, it's all the same thing. So just representing, the oneness on a macro and micro scale. You see certain shapes are larger, certain are smaller, but essentially they're all one. They're all, doing the same thing, just simply, dancing, vibrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I try to, again, just imagine just, the oneness of everything. That's, the composition you see is, it's non-divisive.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of valuing something small and valuing something really large is, I think that's lovely, because there are, that sense of value in all things gives you a different perspective on life, I think. I mean, instead of making something more important and devaluing something smaller, giving weight or credence to something that is small can be a really lovely thing.
Certainly.
I think I see that in in how I approach layers and shifts. That's some of my inspiration, is the idea of things changing over time and shifting in ways that we might not think was intentional, but ends up being very beautiful. So even negative things that happen that can have a redemptive quality to them, which makes me think of your titles. I feel like your titles are a very redemptive, have a redemptive quality to them in just making that shift. We've actually had dinner conversations about your titles with our family, because I was really, when you shared that, what you did with your titles, that alone is so intentional.
Thanks.
You want to talk a little bit about that too, because I bet people would want to know about it. It's so cool.
Yeah, again, the title of the show is Intimacy Aware. And, I keep saying it sounds kind of corny when I say it, but, it's a love letter to love, It's saying, hey, love, I see you, I recognize you, you're not a stranger here. So essentially, with these larger pieces, I took the notion, especially with the largest piece, I made the largest piece, the primary subject, I guess.
Okay.
But I took the notion of hate and, just kind of sat with it. It's like, what does hate mean? Like, when we say, I hate cauliflower, what does that mean? That's a strong word.
Yeah.
Why do we say hate? So I had a whole plan, with these larger pieces. More or less, the plan was just to take a term seen as divisive and just to kind of invert it, to flip it out, inside out, and make it something worthwhile.
Okay.
And then I just woke up one morning, and it's like, you know what, this can be, even more precise. So I took the word hate and just inverted it. So H-A-T-E became E-A-T-H, or whatever, you get the gist. Was it E-T-A-H? Yeah. So, the word, it's not even pronounceable, but the word looks, archaic in a sense. There's an archaic feel to it.
Yeah.
So I just took, words like malice and rancor and did the same thing. Just kind of flipped them.
Yeah. It's great, because I think I have talked to, like I said, I've talked to a couple people about that who came to the show when we opened, and their comments were, it felt interesting and intriguing, like they wanted to try to read it, but then realized, I don't know what that means. And so it kind of gives this sense of, you stop and you wonder and you're not sure. And sometimes titles can be very dismissive, in that they're either kind of a pat, which I'm not knocking on anybody's. I mean, everybody has to do what they need to do for their titling, but I think taking it, and we talked about this at the opening, taking something that can sometimes just be a side note and really making it its own contribution. Your titles are their own contribution to the whole of this show. And I think that's really lovely.
Thank you.
Very intentional.
Thank you very much.
So Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So we spoke about the grayscale piece in this wall.
Yeah.
I described it as just a photograph taken of the moon
Yeah.
and inverted, where you would have, a black background. You flip it and it's now a white background.
Yeah.
And all the shadows are now inverted and they're, emitting light, and vice versa. The light has inverted to shadow. The question is, essentially with each piece, are you thinking of literal landscapes? Do you have photos of mountains or whatever valleys that you're painting and creating in your own image, I guess?
Yeah. I think originally when I started creating these landscapes years ago, I started with very specific places. I love rocks and rock structures, and so a lot of my early stuff, I'd say probably at least 10 years ago, ended up being from specific rock structures where I'd photograph them and I would never completely create them as I saw them, but pull from them. So a lot of inspiration of just how line would work over the surface of rock formations and the places where there would be, shifts and crumbles and shapes made. That very much inspires me. And I can't take a road trip without, I see some rocks on the side of the road or some sort of rock structure or, even concrete. I have this love with concrete too, and just the way that it responds to time and age. So those kinds of things and more the breaking down points and the creating something new out of that. So like for a concrete wall, we go to the beach and there's a barricade or something that has been broken down with time. And so the interest to me is how those parts come together with some sort of wreckage, if you will, creating something new and interesting. And so that's the metaphor that I find very fascinating and very applicable to life in general. There are shapes that seem to be very familiar, and I think that's where the consistency in my work comes, is that there are shapes that are maybe like they've just sat with me, and so they keep coming back in different ways. And I think because I do draw, just like when you do anything repetitiously, you create something that is consistent. And so my line feels like it is kind of my signature or personality in a way, that it is something that I'm pretty confident I'm not wondering, oh, will that line come out? I just create it now. So some of those, I know that influence has come from the Oregon coast, the rock formations there. I have really dear family that live on the Oregon coast, and I've spent some time there, and so personally, that's come into it for me as well. Okay. Do you have pieces that are easier than others to create?
I really don't think of anything as difficult.
Okay. In the way that you create, do all the pieces flow in a similar way and they're just different among themselves? Yeah. Or are there some that you feel a little bit of that hitch of challenge, maybe? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess to answer the question, I really don't have an attachment to any of the pieces. Like again, the frisbee toss, or prime the frisbee toss, sketch around the frisbee toss, and then I have a system, where I place the colors in certain spots, and that's about it.
Okay.
It's on to the next kind of thing.
Okay. So they just keep coming out of that process.
Right.
What do you listen to anything while you are creating?
I started listening to podcasts, during the pandemic. which I'd never listened to.
Yeah, I feel like we could do, raise your hand, how many people started listening to podcasts during the pandemic?
I used to, listen to jazz music, throw in some Miles or some Coltrane.
Yeah.
And then I started, just painting in silence, just to be informed by, the cars going, outside and the leaves blowing from the wind and all these just, sounds outside of my apartment.
Yeah.
And then, just the pandemic, it's like, I'm reading about podcasts, what's the big deal?
Yeah, I know. I know. Same here.
So,
Podcasts that I listen to are mostly interviews. Mm-hmm. So there's a dialogue between people. Yeah. And for me, that's something, I like conversations, so there's that. But then I also feel like I learn more as I hear people ask it, because you can have somebody just talk about themselves, but when you have throw in the, like what we're doing here, asking questions, you're finding yourself thinking about things that you weren't conjuring up, that someone else brought from you. I think that creates a little bit of vulnerability, but also, we can't think of everything on our own. We need each other in that. So it creates a different dynamic, which I find very fascinating. But yeah, I think the story aspect is what comes out when we ask each other about story. I just think that's fascinating.
Sure.
I think we were supposed to be that way. That's how we are as humans, is we want that aspect of story, and also to be found in, to be important, like every little thing being important, that weight of importance. I think we all have our stories matter, and they matter to each other. When we connect with each other and resonate with each other and hear each other, that's where that value comes in too. So, yeah, that's cool. So yeah, podcasts are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to the moon piece.
Yeah.
This isn't a question, it's just a statement. Like, I'd love to see more pieces, using grayscale.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're just striking,
Well, thank you.
I'm reminded of the black on black piece.
Yeah. And I love the black on black piece. And I think I was telling you, I am always drawn to art that is grayscale or black and white. That is always top on my list. And for some reason, I keep creating a lot of color. I don't know what happens. Like, I tried really hard. I was going to do a series. That's as far as I got. I got one grayscale piece and one that started morphing into color. It tried to be a grayscale piece completely, but then that little bit of Titan buff got in there, and it it just happens. But do you push yourself to be monochromatic? Do you make a conscious choice for that, or does it just happen?
Honestly, just, it depends on the mood I'm in, I guess.
Okay.
The black on blacks, like, they're just, I try to, express the unexpressible with the black on blacks.
Okay.
Stillness, how can you can't express stillness. It's not an expression. So I'll use those more or less just as, I think of, my favorite film is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
When I first saw I'm not sure if you've seen the film. Okay.
I mean, I know of it, but yes.
Sure. But about the monolith.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this monolith is just, the first time I saw the movie, I was like, wow, that's, it's, I can understand the attraction to it. It's just so, it's not doing anything. It's just,
It just is?
Yeah, yeah. And
okay.
It just has this magnetic effect, just by being,
Okay.
And, Frank Stella, was inspired by his paintings. So the colorful paintings that I do, those are really Frank Stella inspired.
Okay.
But he did a series of black on black paintings as well. And, he pretty much used black, and he left the raw canvas underneath as well. So it wasn't entirely black on black.
Okay.
And I just wanted to do something similar to that. But, again, just his inspiration, and then Kubrick's inspiration with the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Just the indescribable nature of it. It's just, I just wanted to express that. Again, the size of my paintings, I paint black for that same reason. Just to show what's underneath all of the vibration, all the composition, all the shape. The shapeless, the formless. So that's where the black on black pieces came from.
Okay.
Everything else, again, just colors everywhere.
Yeah.
The color that we see is vibration. So just trying to express that, the best way I can.
Okay. How do you make the color choices? So some of them have very vibrant and complementary or opposite, if you will, type colors, but some of them are a little bit more monochromatic. Do you choose a color palette before you get started, or does that unfold as you go?
It's usually before.
Okay.
I could be walking down the street and see a woman in a dress. It's like, wow, that looks great. Mm-hmm. Those colors work for the dress, so why wouldn't they work?
Yeah.
And I don't copy the color, the exact color, but just try to remix it.
Yeah, the idea of them.
Yeah.
And things that go together. Yeah.
How about you?
I like that.
I look at like your earth tones and, like you said, Titan buffs.
Yeah, Titan buff is a favorite of mine. I have tubes and tubes of that stuff.
I just started using it this summer.
Yeah, I'll use it instead of white. Mm-hmm. And it gives, I think, especially if I'm doing a warmer palette, it definitely keeps me from going too quickly to I'll just add white. Mm-hmm. And I like the idea of using different colors together to create, the lighter or the dark, to play with those hues and the variation. I really try to limit my palette. Like, that's my personal challenge to myself, is I'll try to choose around 5 colors for a palette, like out of the tube colors. And then from there, all the colors come by combinations. So I'm mixing, a little bit of this with a little bit of this to create, and so my palette is just this big mix of all these different things, and I mix with my brush. I'm not a palette knife person necessarily, and so I mix on the brush and just keep within those 5 essentially out of the tube colors.
Yeah.
And so that I choose beforehand, but it really then, like these 2 are from the same palette.
Okay.
But I make different choices for them. So I used, I have that same palette going with the same colors, but how I mix them ends up being a little different. And so that ends up being how I relate, how pieces relate to each other, is that they share those essential colors, and then, they might have their own personality coming out of that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for, that white on white piece, I took some Titan buff and, added some titanium white, just to kind of, lighten it a bit, to make it closer to the actual titanium white.
Yeah.
And then just play with those 2.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting how colors react to each other. Mm-hmm. And I love the color wheel, and I love working with complementary colors. That is something that has been always kind of a thing with me, is that, especially with orange and blue, I'm very much an orange and blue, but not necessarily, and not really ever an orange or blue out of the tube kind of person. So seeing how many oranges and how many blues I can get to work together, and what that might look like.
Sure.
Just like to think of it in terms, it feels like another layer of relationship.
It is, yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah, I used to do the same thing. Take, just funky complementary colors. Just a yellow ochre and kind of a ultramarine blue, just to get these,
Yeah, and see how you can get that to come together, because visually it works.
Oh, sure.
But then to create something that isn't just I put these 2 colors together, but really to create those relationships and to let that unfold. Yeah. That's how I end up, every part of my pieces has multiple layers. I would say sometimes up to 10 layers of very different colors. I often use underpainting, so some areas that are very neutral started out bright orange or a bright red, to create just this under layer of richness. Probably similar to what your black does as far as creating this base of color and then building on top of that. And I do sand sometimes too in between layers just to get something to pop through. I like that, which definitely with my, like the upper parts of my panels, usually it looks like a sky. In the landscapes, I do a lot of sanding and playing with with colors coming through and texture coming through, and I like that idea of we have so much more than what you see to us, and so I like that idea of representing that in paint and what might come through. It's kind of a surprise in that process for me. I can paint this layer and I can create texture, and then I can paint another layer over it and then another, and work that way, and then sand. I don't know what it's going to look like when I sand it. That's the surprise part that I think is real life, because people are like, we're surprising.
Certainly.
Like we're predictable and we're surprising all together.
I agree.
Yeah. I very much, I know that in the art world, having a solo show is that's kind of been the thing, but I think with the way that I approach art, I want it to be about relationship and to be about seeing how the work speaks to each other, and how, it is, as Judith says, a living, breathing thing that reflects hopefully the time in which we live. It reflects a human being's processing of that time, and it should reach out and speak to people.
Certainly.
So
but yeah, it's just I'm grateful to be presenting work with you.
Oh,
the juxtaposition is just beautiful.
It is. It's amazing. Nicely done, Judith.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think it's great. I do want to know if you had to say, and I'm wondering what you're going to say about this in light of what we've already talked about difficulty, but is there a part of the art process, like from beginning to end, that is frustrating or more difficult for you than others? Like if you had to say, what is your artist struggle? What is your artist struggle?
Stopping.
Okay. For each individual piece, or like that you just keep because you do just keep creating work.
Yeah,
right?
I literally wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning and just eat breakfast and then just start, and before I know it, it's like 9 o'clock p.m. And wondering why my stomach is growling. I didn't eat lunch.
Right. Okay.
I didn't eat dinner. So it's just the stopping. Once I'm in the zone, I'm just gone. How about you? What's the difficulty?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about work that I've done in the past and letting my work grow, and letting myself mature, letting myself learn new things, and being willing to continue walking that out, and not looking back and being critical of where I've been in the past, or to give again the value to everything. Like that phase or that stage, that was right where I was at, and it was my best for right then. And so to allow, and then shorter term, if I'm not careful, I can pick apart what I've just created and how could it be better. So for me, not getting stuck in the constant critique of it could be better, I wish this was different, but rather to let each piece, to get it to the point where I am satisfied, where I feel, like I've said, where those basic elements composition and like those have come together, and then letting it be, coming to that place of, okay, you are now done, and I'm gonna move to the next thing, and I'm going to celebrate what you are, and the work that was put into that without being too critical and thinking, oh, I could have done more, or I could have, because for me, I have 4 kids, and I am running a household, and I'm also teaching, and so I have a lot of things that pull at my day. So finding that time and that space and making that both sacred and fluid, because I have other things I'm juggling as well. All of that coming together, being satisfied and content with the process and continuing to pursue excellence, give myself grace for the areas that I feel like I'm falling down, and just keep moving like a big circus that I feel like I am sometimes.
Yeah. I'll just say to wrap it up, it's interesting that you talked about the critiquing. The way I got over the critique aspect of it is essentially I look at, the critique is kind of dualistic. There's worthiness and unworthiness. So I try not to look at the pieces as worthy, but I go beyond worth, so I see each piece as priceless.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly. But yeah, before I start, like it's priceless.
Yeah. And I think of work as having something, like I'm discovering it as it unfolds itself. I don't mean that in like a spooky weirdo way. I mean it as I think that the work is there and it's waiting to be written in a way. It's waiting to be found. And I'm part of that process of letting it be found. And that helps me not get so caught up in it being about me. I'm there to discover and to let it be seen and to connect with people through that. Not coming at it with a dictation of this is what it has to be. So there is an element of discovery for me in that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Just a seed. A flower starts off as a seed. So you got to plant the seed, and it goes through those stages.
Yeah.
If you want a flower, you got to plant a seed.
Right.
Yeah.
If you want a painting, you might have to throw a donut.
Exactly. There you go.
That's it. If we can make a t-shirt.
Yeah. That's the selling, I guess. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Judith, for doing this. Thank you all who listen for listening, joining us.
Thank you, Jazz, and thank you, Melana. It's always exciting to hear more about both of your works and your inspirations. I'm just thrilled to have both of you showing in the gallery together. Thank you again for watching. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and be the first to see the new episodes. Follow us on Instagram at Rinehart Gallery to see all the work and get more information at www.jrinehartgallery.com. Until next time.